This is the 2022 Lexus LX, the first new model of this sort for 14 years. This is a large luxury SUV and it is the flagship of Lexus's SUV range. The prices start from $148,800 and it's available in both petrol and diesel power. This is based on the same platform as the new LandCruiser 300 series, so it's got a lot of off-road capability going on. This is a big luxury SUV and it's loaded with a lot of technology and features, so there's a fair bit to get through in this video, so let's get stuck into it. The 2022 Lexus LX is built using the same GAF Toyota platform as the new LandCruiser 300 series. So that means underneath all of that new sheet metal, you will find a ladder chassis, live rear axle and four-wheel drive powertrain. This makes the Lexus LX the only off-road capable SUV in the range. Unlike the LandCruiser, however, this generation Lexus LX is available with petrol power. There is a 3.3 litre turbo diesel, which is the same as the LandCruiser. That makes 227 kilowatts and 700 Newton meters. However, the 3.4 litre twin turbocharged V6 petrol, which does need premium fuel, makes 305 kilowatts and 650 Newton meters. This is a new engine for the Australian market and it costs $3,500 more than the diesel option. Both of these engines run through a 10-speed automatic transmission with full-time four-wheel drive and a low-range transfer case. Where the diesel-powered Lexus LX 500D claims 8.9 litres per 100 Ks on the combined cycle, the petrol-powered LX 600 claims 12.1 litres per 100 on the same cycle. On the inside, the Lexus LX is equipped with a 12.3-inch infotainment display, a 7-inch secondary display, heads-up display, and 8-inch multifunction display. Standard fare also includes a 25-speaker Mark Levinson sound system. There is a wider range of specifications available, starting with the 7-seat LX 500D and LX 600 variant, and that starts from $148,800 before on-road costs. That is followed by the 5-seat Sports Luxury variant at $165,800, and then the 5-seat sports-oriented F-Sport variant. That goes from $171,800, once again before on-road costs. And finally, at the very top is the petrol-only Ultra Luxury. This variant only seats 4, with a unique arrangement of captain's chairs in the second row. This is the most expensive variant as well, costing $210,800. This is the interior of the new Lexus LX and it's quite a nice place to be. This car is based on the same platform as the LandCruiser 300 series, but the interior, it's reminiscent in a few ways, but it is very different. The first thing you'll notice is this infotainment display. That's 12.3 inches. It's quite a landscape design there. It's big and it's nice and easy to use. There is a new infotainment display operating system in there. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital radio, all of those things that you know and love. And it's also got the ability for you to download an app and there's extra connected features you can do through there. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this new infotainment display. Below that, you've got another display and that is for your air conditioning controls and also a bit of the vehicle chassis controls, things like off-road driving modes, raising and lowering the suspension and a bunch of other things. You can do that through there. But I do like to see, and it's probably not to everyone's taste, but I do like to see actual manual controls for things like climate control. There is also a volume knob there. It makes this Lexus easy to use on the run. As often as some of these large luxury SUVs might have a more minimalist design with less buttons and less controls going on, that can make it a little bit easier to use, but this might seem a little bit old-fashioned on first impressions, but when you're driving, using it every day, this is easy to operate. Another thing to talk about here is the multifunction display in front of the driver. Now that has got a big tacho in the middle. You can't run things like big maps in that display there. You've also got a few throwback things to a LandCruiser 300 series, things like a battery voltmeter. You've also got an oil pressure gauge. Not many large luxury SUVs have that sort of thing. But overall, general comfort is very good. And the materials, of course, that's a signature Lexus thing, I think, is all very nice. But overall, interior comfort is very high. The seats are wonderful. There's all kinds of adjustment going on here. You've got an electrically controlled steering column right across the range. And of course, the materials are all a really high level, and that is very typical for a Lexus. Now, let's jump in the second row and see what the space and comfort is like in there. This is the second row of the Lexus LX, and first things first to talk about general space and comfort. That's my driving position up in the front there. And as you can see, there's a fair amount of legroom going on. There's a lot of headroom as well, so large adults can fit in here quite comfortably. You've got an entertainment screen that kind of eats into the space a little bit in a way, but I do like these screens because I gave them a bit of a try before, and you can actually cast things like YouTube, whatever shows you might want to watch onto these screens from your smartphone or your iPad or something like that quite easily. So if you've got kids in the back for long periods of time and you need to keep them entertained, maybe on a road trip or something like that, these will work quite well. And also when they're going to have a little bit of a nap, you've also got blinds in the windows there. It's always a nice thing to have. But in terms of overall space, you could probably fit 3 adults in the back here quite comfortably. There is a fair amount of width in this LX, and room overall is reasonably good. You've also got air vents in the back here. There's vents in the back of the center console, up in the roof as well, and there are dual zone climate controls for the second row here. There's also USB power outlets. There's a 12-volt outlet. There are a lot of features going on in here, and overall space and comfort is really good. One thing to talk about with this LX is the fact that the range starts with a 7-seat variant. Now, this is a 5-seater I'm in at the moment, so I can't show you what it's like, but I can tell you, I jumped in the back of a 7-seater before, and it is pretty spacious and comfortable. I would call it a true 7-seater. Adults can jump in the back there, and it's comfortable enough for reasonably long journeys without too many complaints. Kids would be perfectly happy in the back there. There are things like cup holders and USB power outlets as well, so everyone would be pretty happy. And of course, there is the 4-seater ultra luxury variant as well. And now that is a very different kettle of fish, probably not for the family buyer. That is more for the high-flying executive or the luxury hire fleet, something like that. But for family usage, this 5-seater is a good option because you've got a massive boot in the back there. And if you need a 7-seater, obviously look at those specifications as well. But for a large luxury 4-wheel drive and SUV family car, this does have all the right ingredients. This Lexus LX has pretty big boots to fill, namely because it's based upon the Toyota LandCruiser 300 series. So that's a car with a big reputation, and this effectively has to up the ante in a variety of situations because it's more expensive. This is meant to be the luxury take on a LandCruiser 300 series. And when you think about it, that's even harder at the moment because the LandCruiser has moved a little bit more upmarket with the new model. It's a bit more expensive, it's got lots of bells and whistles, and it's not what you would call a normal mainstream car anymore. It's quite premium. But Lexus has taken that LandCruiser base. It's the same new platform, the TNGA-F ladder chassis platform. It's got the shared 3.3 litre turbo diesel as well. However, you do get a 3.4 litre twin turbo petrol V6, which the LandCruiser gets in other markets, and it's based on the Lexus LS 500 as well. One of the big changes is suspension, and this Lexus LX has height adjustable suspension. It doesn't come through air suspension like you might expect, however. It's got a hydraulic oil system that is connected into all of the different shock absorbers, and that allows it to go up and down in terms of ride height, but it also gives the suspension some variable nature to it. And you've got a bunch of drive modes here. You've got electric steering, that is different to the LandCruiser steering system. And what you can do effectively is run through a wide variety of driving modes, and there is a massive difference between the way the Lexus LX feels in those different modes. You've got Sport Plus, you've got a Sport mode, and that's all well and good to have. This Lexus is definitely more tied down. It's lighter, it's more powerful, it's a little bit more dynamically able than the previous generation, but it's still nowhere near what I would call a sports car. For me, the strength of this Lexus comes in the ride comfort on rough surfaces. I can go into MTS here, multi-terrain select, I turn the dial around to dirt, and this thing softens off quite noticeably. It soaks up big bumps and vibrations quite well. I'm driving over some pretty badly corrugated roads at the moment. Don't forget, I'm on 22-inch wheels, and I haven't touched the tire pressures on this thing. This is still at road pressures, and it's soaking everything up quite nicely. You'll notice going through corners that there is actually a little bit of body wallow in this mode. It's like an old-fashioned four-wheel drive in a way that's just built to soak up the bumps and lumps. This 3.3 litre turbo diesel doesn't really need an introduction. It was debuted on the LandCruiser 300 series after all, but I'll give you the basics. It's a 3.3 litre twin turbo diesel. That's a sequential turbocharging system, and it makes 227 kilowatts and 700 newton meters. Now that makes it more powerful than the LX 450D that it effectively replaces. And it's running through a 10-speed automatic gearbox. Now this is a great engine and powertrain setup overall. I really like it. A lot of people will love the V8, yes, but this thing's got more power, it's got more torque, it's got more flexibility, and this thing is actually a little bit lighter and stiffer. All things that are mirrored from the LandCruiser 300 series, and it's all a good thing for the car. Another one of the big differences comes from this electronic steering. So this is fully electric instead of the electric over hydraulic system that the LandCruiser 300 has. It's nice and light. You've got a bit of feeling of what's going on there. It's not exactly full of feel and response and that sort of thing, but it makes the car just easy to drive. It's a little bit more of a one hand on the steering wheel, cruising around kind of car. It's comfortable, it's easy, it doesn't feel like the big land yacht that it actually is. Now we did sample this Lexus LX off-road as well, and that was a good experience. It wasn't what I would call overly challenging off-road driving, but I wouldn't call the Lexus LX the kind of four-wheel drive that you bought for that kind of thing anyway. This thing feels capable. Of course it is going to be. It's based on the LandCruiser after all. But if you wanted to choose a four-wheel drive for going hard off-road, maybe pick a LandCruiser, because this thing, it starts at 20-inch wheels and then it only goes up to 22-inch wheels. So you haven't got much sidewall there, so you might run into troubles with tires and damaging wheels and that sort of thing. But on the positive side, while you don't have any locking differentials or that sort of thing, you do have Toyota's multi-terrain select system. It's an off-road traction control. It's very well tuned. It's one of the best in the business actually. And you've also got what they call DAC, downhill assist control, and also the crawl control. That's like an off-road cruise control, and it works well. It's smooth, it's compliant, and it's easy. And if you're buying this thing to only very rarely take off-road, that might be a really good thing to consider, because you're not going to be some sort of seasoned professional and expert off-road. But if you need to go down a big steep descent somewhere, you can press a few buttons here and the car will take a lot of the guessing work out for you, which is a nice thing. It takes the stress levels out of the driving a little bit. You can just focus on the steering and the car will take care of accelerating and braking. In terms of overall driving refinement, it's probably not a good indication at the moment, because I'm driving on a dirt road. It's a little bit rocky, a bit pockmarked, and we're not really driving too slowly either. But after driving it on the bitumen before, actually I was a passenger, I can tell you a little bit about the noise and the noise insulation in particular, and it's quite good. The turbo diesel engine, as always, has a bit of a rumble about it. It's not what I would call a quiet motor, but it does seem to be more insulated in comparison to the LandCruiser 300 series. And the short amount of time that I spent in the LX 600, that's the petrol-powered twin-turbo model, that engine is a little bit quieter once again. This Lexus LX does sit in a little bit of a unique position, I think, in the large luxury SUV segment. It's not necessarily as refined as something like an Audi Q7, BMW X7, Mercedes GLS, and they're all similar size and a similar price, but this Lexus does have advantages of its own. It's based on a LandCruiser after all, so this thing will actually go off-road. Those other large luxury SUVs can't, and this thing will quite happily tow 3.5 tonne at the same time. So in terms of actual true competition, this thing lines up a little bit more against something like a Range Rover or even a Mercedes-Benz G-Class. Now, both of those cars are significantly more expensive than what we have here. So I'm not going to say that this is a value option, but it is going to be a good option for some people who want something big. It'll seat 7, it'll seat 5, it'll seat 4 in very high levels of luxury, but it's big, it's comfortable, and it does have capability and a bit of utility thrown in as well. So I think it's not a bad option for a lot of Australian buyers. If you're watching this video on YouTube, let me know in the comments below. Do you think this Lexus LX is the choice in the large luxury SUV segment, or would you go for something else? And if you're watching on Drive.com.au, you've already got the full written review there for all of the details and all the reviews of competition for this car and every other new car in Australia. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe as well, and also head over to Drive.com.au for the full story.